Unless you've been living under a rock, you're aware that gas prices are out of control. Perhaps no topic elicits more public debate than gas prices, despite the fact that they account for only a low single-digit percentage of total spending, and far lower for those with higher income. The fact that gas prices are broadcast on every street corner makes us more sensitive to day-to-day fluctuations than other items. Californians, on the other hand, have little sympathy for $4 gasoline headlines, the common refrain, "I wish I could pay $4 a gallon." So, why are California's prices so much higher than the rest of the country's? We'll look at 6 major factors that affect both the United States as a whole and California in particular. 1. Geopolitical tendencies. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, as well as the subsequent sanctions and economic fallout, is the most obvious cause of high prices. However, in recent years, headlines have lauded the United States as an energy-independent exporter of fossil fuels. While not technically incorrect, this statistic is misleading. The United States is a net energy exporter, just as a farmer is a net food exporter. Similarly to how a farmer cannot claim to be food independent simply by producing more calories than she exports, the United States is not energy independent in the sense that it does not produce the exact types and amounts of fossil fuels required for the economy. Other fossil fuel products, primarily crude oil and other crude oil products, must still be imported into the United States, while natural gas is primarily exported. Russia accounts for only 8% of U.S. petroleum imports. While that 8% may seem insignificant, it includes 20% of imported petroleum products. This includes everything from finished motor gasoline to the additives needed to produce gasoline in the United States. The manufacturing of gasoline is a complex process that necessitates far more than crude oil. As a result, even if crude oil can be replaced, replacing products like petroleum distillates is a more difficult task. Imagine baking a cake with only flour, sugar, and nothing else. Bottlenecks. You may be tired of hearing about supply chain disruption, but this 2020 issue is still plaguing all industries years later. As difficult as it is to produce gasoline, extracting fossil fuels is even more difficult than sticking a tap in the ground. For example, sand used in fracking operations is in short supply, which limits operations. Unfortunately, a trip to the beach will not suffice to replace this sand. Transportation infrastructure is another constraint. While much has been said about the Keystone XL pipeline, its primary purpose would be to transport Canadian crude oil to the Midwest and onto Gulf Coast refineries. The number of completed liquids pipeline projects peaked in 2014, before shale overproduction caused prices to collapse and capital expenditures to fall accordingly. Producers could double their output, but it would be meaningless unless transportation infrastructure was increased in proportion. While more pipelines are being built, they face challenges ranging from regulatory delays to material shortages, and there is no quick fix for a pipeline. 3. Demand from investors. The early 2010s were a boom time for U.S. fossil fuel production, as techniques like fracking and horizontal drilling proliferated and altered the global energy production landscape. As a result, investors poured money into the sector, allowing a wildcatter's dream to come true and empowering controversial executives to take big risks, and sometimes, get into legal trouble. Unfortunately, the investment truism persists. A high-growth industry does not always imply a high return. According to a damning Deloitte report, since 2010, the U.S. shale industry recorded net negative free cash flows of $300 billion, impaired over $450 billion in invested capital, and saw over 190 bankruptcies. Essentially, shale producers have set hundreds of billions of dollars of investor capital ablaze. Investors were, predictably, dissatisfied with the prevalent growth at any cost mentality. The future looked bleak if the shale industry couldn't grow profitably through multiple bouts of $100+ barrel oil. After oil prices fell from $100/barrel to $30/barrel in 2014 to 2015, the industry was penalized by Wall Street. Despite a 5-year slog of persistently low prices, most producers were not profitable. This was followed by a 2020 in which oil prices fell into negative territory. Investor interest in new wells was non-existent, and a wave of bankruptcies was on the horizon. Instead of collapsing, oil prices have soared back to $100 a barrel. Company executives have yet to regain their appetite for drilling, and the consensus response to a recent Dallas Fed Energy Survey question, which of the following is the primary reason that publicly traded oil producers are restraining growth despite high oil prices? Is investor pressure. 4. Taxation and fees. Let's take a look at one of the California-specific causes of high prices, taxes. While everyone pays a 18-cent federal gas tax, California adds a slew of additional taxes and fees, ranging from sales and excise taxes to hidden producer fees like the underground tank storage fee. Overall, these amount to the highest taxes in the United States, resulting in a 86 cents per gallon cost to Californians. This assumes a weighted average of local sales tax rates. The expenses are as follows. California state excise tax, $0.511. Additional state taxes/fees, $0.1705. The federal excise tax is $0.184. Total cost, $0.8655. Some producer fees, such as the tank storage fee mentioned above, are not immediately visible to the consumer. This cost may be reasonable because it aids in the cleanup of contaminated soil and groundwater caused by leaking tanks. However, the appropriate amount of taxes is a political as well as a fiscal question. It is clear, however, that California's taxes and fees are a state-specific cause of high prices. Geography 5. Despite the fact that California is the most populous state in the United States, with a population that is evenly distributed across the state, the pipeline infrastructure is primarily the result of legacy oil and gas production in the Central Valley and Southern California. The production and refining capacity in the Midwest and Gulf Coast indicate the presence of a robust pipeline infrastructure. The East Coast also has more capacity, owing to its longer involvement in U.S. infrastructure and the economy, as well as being a distribution point for European petroleum exports. California's beautiful coasts and mountains make it a wonderful place to live, but with limited infrastructure, it makes it difficult to transport fossil fuels economically statewide. Furthermore, because California is a car-heavy culture, transportation is the largest source of energy consumption, despite the fact that Californians are among the lowest per capita energy consumers in the U.S. Regulations relating to the environment. California has long been a pioneer in environmental legislation. While some of this may be due to California's political climate, anyone who has driven through a smog-filled Los Angeles in the past knows some of the history that led to gasoline regulations. Most Californians are unaware that the California Reformulated Gas Program requires its own special blend of gasoline. The program, which began in 1991, required that all gasoline be produced in a way that reduced ozone, carbon monoxide, and other carcinogen emissions by 1996. While this is an admirable goal, it means that California gasoline, A, requires more work to refine and, B, cannot be replaced with generic gasoline. California's gasoline market is largely isolated from the national market, and the state is required to refine its own gasoline, making the economics less appealing to refiners. This coincides with a long-term decline in the number of in-state oil refineries, from a peak of 40 to 14 in 2021. California's regulatory environment is unfavorable to additional refining capacity, which coincides with the state's goal of shifting to renewable energy. However, reducing refineries by 65% during a period of economic and population growth is a recipe for higher prices. Conclusion. In economics, there's a saying that you can't do everything. Today's high prices are the result of a confluence of public policy decisions and exogenous factors outside of our control. This is not to say that the policy is incorrect. An economist would argue that high prices provide an incentive to switch to renewable energy. As we embark on the most significant energy transition since the Industrial Revolution, being better informed enables us to be more active participants in shaping our own future. It is our responsibility to ensure that this is done correctly.